Hello and welcome back to Anglo Elections Insights, where I'm continuing a series previewing the upcoming federal election in Australia. We're halfway through New South Wales, and today I'm focusing on Sydney's inner suburbs, with a little bit of the south, the west, and the north thrown in. But we'll just jump straight in, I suppose. So, to begin with, this matrix where we can see that for most of the 20th century and most of the 21st century and then honestly a good whack of the 20th century, the Liberals have had a really strong hold on these sort of these suburbs immediately north of Sydney Harbour, and the eastern suburbs of Sydney in Wentworth. Bennelong probably did belong in that bracket, but now has become a bit more marginal. But then in sort of central and inner western Sydney, the Labor have had a really firm grip there, and that's likely to continue as long as Plibersek and Albanese remain in Parliament. And then we have Reid, which is something of a bellwether, and that's going to make it quite interesting this election. But then, of course, we all know what happened in 2022 in Sydney's Liberal heartland. The Teals came along and simply dropped a bomb on it, and now I wouldn't say the Liberals are locked out of it, but they've got a serious challenge on their hands just to win back any of those seats, and defend Bradfield as well. And you can see this on the map, this really strong cluster of seats in Sydney's east and north, intact all the way through 2016, particularly strong year, with Malcolm Turnbull quite popular in metropolitan Sydney. And then 2022, Labor cleaning up on the south side of the harbour, and the Liberals under serious threat from Teals and losing a large swath of seats to the north. So we'll jump straight into the key seats. We're going to begin with Reid. This is in inner western Sydney, mostly a bellwether this century, but it fell to Labor in 2022 on a very, very strong swing, one of the strongest Liberal to Labor swings nationwide. It has a high percentage of South Asian people as well as Chinese Australians, and is in general just a very diverse seat. And perhaps that's one of the reasons why the Liberals had experienced such a swing against them. It was that tide of the Chinese vote in particular turning against them. But Reid is a very mixed electorate. It's always in play, no matter the election, basically. You've got some areas of Liberal affluence around Drummoyne and these sort of more, I guess, harbour or riverside suburbs, but then you've got these diverse, quite highly dense areas towards the south of the seat, and particularly as you go further west, which are a bit more favourable to Labor. And it's always been that sort of push and pull between those two sort of groups of people, and how the vote sort of oscillates between them. You've got a lot of young renters, but at the same time you have high household income, and you have high rates of educational attainment, and because it's not a growth corridor, you don't really have mortgages, so it's not that sort of Anglo white working class vote that Peter Dutton is probably appealing to a little bit better than previous Liberal leaders have in recent memory. But it is one of those seats that has swung usually from whoever forms government that cycle. So definitely one to keep an eye on, but I must admit I'm not sure it's the type of seat that Dutton is going to outperform in necessarily. We can see the 2022 result marked by Fiona Martin having a 10.5% swing against her on primary, and that basically handed the seat to Labor. From what I understand, she was a little bit of a dud as well. She made some key mistakes towards the end of her tenure and during her campaign. So perhaps with a good nationwide and statewide swing and a better candidate, the Liberals could just sweep this one up anyway, but we shall see. So moving on to Bennelong, this one is subject to a redistribution that has made it a notionally Liberal seat on current boundaries, but it does have a Labor member currently. It's Western North Shore of Sydney Harbour. Formerly a blue ribbon Liberal seat. This was John Howard's seat for just over 3 decades, but as we've seen in 2007 and 2022, Labor can win it in good cycles now. High concentration of Chinese Australians, one of the highest in Australia, and that's significant because Scott Yung is running for the Liberals, and he's thought to have particular appeal to that demographic because of his strong showing against Chris Minns in the 2019 New South Wales state election. This is a seat that's very white collar, I guess you'd say. High rates of educational attainment, lots of professionals, lots of young professionals, and high household income compared to the nation at large. So old money, but also with an injection of new money, and that's what's pushing the seat sort of more into Labor's hands. But with that notional margin and how the nationwide and statewide mood seems to be gearing up, you would think that this is one that the Liberals could pick up with relative ease. But again, not the sort of seat necessarily that Peter Dutton has unique appeal in. And you can see last time, Green's preference is able to push Labor in, just ahead at the final count. So then we have Bradfield. This is possibly the most interesting of the seats that we'll look at. This is northwest metropolitan Sydney. Again, it's had a fairly big redistribution due to the abolishment of North Sydney. Once again, another former blue ribbon Liberal seat, still currently held by the Liberals, but very marginal now with the Teal challenger. They recently completed their pre-selection and they selected Gazelle Kaptarian, who is a sort of younger woman, more from the moderate wing of the party, which it's probably a wise move on behalf of the local branch members there, given that she'll be running against a Teal and trying to compete for that sort of doctors' wives vote, perhaps. Again, household income high levels of education, lots of professionals, and that same thing, high Chinese Australian population. So if Dutton's been able to sort of mend relations, or the Liberal Party at large has been able to mend relations enough with Chinese Australian voters, then this is one that they should be able to defend. But the Teal challenger is launching a really strong campaign, so it's anyone's seat, but I do think that the Liberals have a really strong chance of retaining. And as we can see last time, high enough primary for Paul Fletcher to hang on, but even on only about 21% primary, the final 2 candidate preferred was relatively close, and with the redistribution, it's estimated that the margin is now only about 2.5% to the Liberals. So then moving into Mackellar, it's this one up north, pretty large seat based on Sydney's Northern Beaches. Again, another one that was a blue ribbon Liberal seat. Now it's marginally held by Sophie Scamps. Here, it's a much older population and definitely not a very diverse population. But again, ranks high for household income and educational attainment. I think it comes down a little bit to Sophie Scamps herself. She's not really like a Monique Ryan, who has that sort of more left-wing appeal. This is a Sophie Scamps, I find, is very sort of pro-business as far as the Teals go. I think that that sort of older, well-educated voter in a seat like Mackellar probably recognises that and is happy enough with her performance in Parliament to return her. We'll see how strong the Liberals campaign here, but I would be surprised if this was one that they seriously targeted personally, but we'll keep an eye on it. And there, as we can see, the Liberal primary back in the early 40s, and Sophie Scamps with a really strong primary vote herself, and then getting over the top with Labor and Greens preferences reasonably comfortably in the end. And finally, Wentworth. This one has taken some... It was a very safe blue ribbon sort of Liberal seat. It was held by Malcolm Turnbull, but it was already one that was marginal in terms of the Liberal-Labor contest, and in fact, when Turnbull resigned, it actually fell to an independent at the ensuing by-election, and it was only just gained back by Dave Sharma. So, given the type of member that Allegra Spender is, again, another one that tends to vote more with the Liberals than perhaps some of the other Teals, that has been noticed. I think she's known as a very sort of centrist and almost centre-right member. I think for the purposes of the Liberals, this is a seat that's actually in danger of falling to Labor if it's simply a Liberal versus Labor contest. I think it's probably in their interest, particularly because of the inflated margin on redistribution, that they're probably better off just keeping Allegra Spender in place, and it's hers until she retires. We do have a high number of millennials in this seat, so it goes to show that these Teal seats are not all the same. They do have a wide-ranging appeal. Yes, it's the high levels of household income and educational attainment that links these seats, but it's across a much more diverse age range, perhaps, than what you might have thought. And as we can see, Allegra Spender also into the mid-30s with her primary, and getting Dave Sharma's almost below 40 in the end. Comfortable win, and it's going to be easier for her to retain this seat, given the redistribution. So then you would have seen this slide before if you've seen the other videos in New South Wales, but we're looking at definitely a statewide swing to the Liberals at this stage, but not as aggressive as Victoria. But from what I hear, there is a mood for change in New South Wales that perhaps isn't as strong somewhere like Queensland or particularly WA or South Australia. And New South Wales is the kind of state that there's such a diverse electoral landscape that we're probably going to see very divergent movement in terms of swings between different seats. This is the MRP polling, the 3 waves we've had so far. The independent seats, it's probably not wise to take too much from the results there, but it is interesting to note the LNP primary in Bradfield at 47. I know Climate 200 polled that seat, and apparently it's more like 43, but anywhere in that mid-40s range is probably enough for the Liberals to hang on. So that's an interesting data point. The other ones are Reid, which was... the first 2 waves were pretty comfortable holds for Labor, but then the final one here with the Liberal primary at 44%, that was extremely competitive. And I think, except for the first wave, pretty much the other 2 readings here in Bennelong are showing a Liberal gain, and you can see the primary going from the early 40s to the mid 40s. That's definitely enough for them to win that seat. And so then for my predictions, I've added Barawa and a couple of other seats here, but Reid, I have the Labor Party retaining this seat. Again, it just goes back to the fact that it's not the type of seat that I think Dutton has unique appeal in. So without a really strong statewide swing, as we might see in Victoria, I'm not sure it's necessarily going to get washed away in the tide. Bennelong, I think, just on the margin as it is, I just can't see Labor hanging on there. Bradfield, this is anyone's seat, truly, but I think with the member, or with the candidate that the Liberals have chosen, that they should have the strength to hang on against a Teal challenger, but it would really depend on what the mood is on the street there, and I must admit I don't spend a lot of time in Sydney's northern suburbs, but from what I can tell, I think the Liberals have a fairly good chance of retaining, particularly if Climate 200's polling has the primary at 43. I think that should be enough. Mackellar, independent retain, pretty much no change to the margin. And then Wentworth, I think, will be a very comfortable retain for Allegra Spender. And as we can see, a couple of marginal Liberal seats here, and then the independents mostly hanging on to their gains, and I suppose Reid also coming in for the Labor Party, and sort of, I guess it's one of those barometer seats where if the Liberals were to form government, they're probably taking Reid, and if it's a Labor minority government, they're probably hanging on. So that's it for today. And in a very sort of different area to the Central Coast and Hunter that we explored last time, and probably not, except for perhaps Bradfield. I won't be keeping a particularly close eye on these seats on the night. I think as far as the Teals go, Victoria and Curtin in WA are probably where to watch in terms of the Liberals potentially gaining those seats, but obviously Bradfield is going to be one of the most contested seats on the night. Next up, I'll be doing Southern Sydney, including a little bit of the Illawarra as well. Hopefully I'll be able to get that one out early this week, and then I'll be finishing off in Western Sydney, and then that will be the nation done. So please join me for those videos. Thanks for watching this one. Please like the video, comment your thoughts below, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Have a good one, guys. Cheers.